Welcome to the Channel Error Coins Hub. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still leave you with enough to retire in paradise. Imagine reaching into an old jar, pulling out a tiny copper nickel disc, and discovering that collectors would literally fight over it in auction rooms. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. And today we are diving deep into one of the most legendary error coins ever to slip through the United States Mint. The year is 1972. The coin is the humble 1 dime, and the value attached to the rarest examples of this piece is a staggering $44 million. Yes, you heard that right, $44 million for a single dime that looks almost identical to the billions of others produced that same year. But here's the catch. Not every 1972 dime is worth a fortune, and that's exactly why you need to stay with me until the very end of this video, because I am about to break down every microscopic detail that separates a worthless 10-cent piece from a life-changing treasure that could be hiding in your couch cushions, your glove compartment, or that dusty coffee can in your grandmother's attic. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of mint marks, die varieties, and strike errors, let me paint you a picture of the world in 1972. The Vietnam War was still raging. Nixon was in the White House, Elvis was selling out arenas, and the United States Mint was churning out dimes at the Philadelphia and Denver mints to keep commerce flowing across a nation of over 200 million people. The standard 1972 Roosevelt dime, featuring the familiar profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch flanked by olive branch and oak branch on the reverse, was struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition, a material that had replaced silver in 1965 due to rising precious metal prices. To the untrained eye, these dimes were utterly ordinary, just another year in the long-running series that began in 1946 to honor the president who guided America through the Great Depression and World War II. But beneath that unassuming surface, a handful of coins carried mistakes so rare, so subtle, and so historically significant that they would eventually command prices that defy logic and rewrite the rules of numismatic collecting. The 1972 dime was produced during a transitional period at the Mint, a time when quality control was straining under the pressure of massive production quotas and aging equipment was beginning to show its wear in the dies used to strike coins. Philadelphia struck the vast majority of dimes that year, and these no-mint mark pieces are the ones you are most likely to encounter in circulation today, worth exactly 10 cents unless they happen to possess one of several dramatic error types. Denver contributed its share as well, marked with the tiny D mint mark that appears just below the torch on the reverse. And while these are slightly less common in some grades, they too are generally not valuable in standard condition. However, and this is where your heart should start beating a little faster, the minting process in 1972 was not perfect, and perfection is exactly what makes imperfection valuable in the world of rare coins. Let me walk you through the specific errors and varieties that have sent collectors into a frenzy and driven auction prices into the stratosphere. First, we have the legendary 1972 no-mint mark error, a coin that was supposed to carry the D for Denver but was struck with a die that either had the mint mark filled, polished away, or never punched in the first place, resulting in a Denver-struck dime that appears to be a Philadelphia issue. This type of error is exceptionally rare because mint marks are applied to the dies before they ever reach the coining press, and for one to be missing means either a die was repolished to the point of obliteration or a Philadelphia die was somehow used at Denver, both scenarios that should have been caught by inspectors but occasionally slipped through the cracks of a factory producing millions of coins per day. Then there is the double die obverse, a phenomenon that occurs when the hub impresses the design onto the die twice at slightly different angles, creating a doubling effect that is visible on the date, the lettering of Liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and Roosevelt's profile. The 1972 double die dimes are among the most sought-after varieties in the entire Roosevelt series because the doubling is often dramatic enough to see with the naked eye, yet subtle enough that many have been spent into circulation by people who simply did not know what they were holding. When you examine the date on a genuine 1972 double die, the numbers appear to have a shadow or a ghost image slightly offset from the primary strike, and the serifs on the letters show distinct doubling that separates this error from the worthless machine doubling that occurs during normal striking. Machine doubling, you see, is merely mechanical distortion that happens when the die bounces or shifts during the strike, and it creates flat, shelf-like secondary images that lack the sharp, raised quality of true hub doubling. True double dies are the result of a misalignment during the die creation process itself, making them genuine mint errors with established rarity and massive collector demand. Another category of 1972 dime errors that can transform pocket change into a fortune is the OFF center strike, which happens when the coin blank or planchet is not properly seated in the collar that holds it during striking, causing the design to be struck partially off the edge of the metal. The value of off-center strikes depends entirely on how dramatic the misalignment is. A coin struck 10% off-center might fetch a few $100s, but one struck 50% or more off-center while still showing the full date can bring thousands or even tens of thousands at auction because the date visibility is crucial for attribution and historical documentation. Then we have the broad-struck errors, where the coin expands beyond its normal diameter because the retaining collar failed to engage during striking, creating a thin, oversized dime that looks like a copper-nickel pancake with Roosevelt's face stretched across it. These are visually spectacular errors that appeal even to non-collectors because they are so dramatically different from normal coins, and the 1972 broad-struck dimes in high grade have sold for impressive sums to enthusiasts who specialize in striking anomalies. We also cannot overlook the filled die errors, where grease, dirt, or debris clogs the recesses of the die and prevents the design from transferring fully to the coin, resulting in missing elements like the torch details, the mint mark, or portions of Roosevelt's hair. While these might seem like damaged coins to the uninitiated, numismatists recognize them as genuine mint errors with specific attribution numbers and dedicated collector markets, and a 1972 dime with a dramatically filled die that obliterates a major design element can command significant premiums over face value. Now, let me tell you why collectors are absolutely obsessed with these error coins and why the prices have climbed to such astronomical heights. In the world of numismatics, rarity is the ultimate driver of value, and error coins represent the rarest of the rare because they were never supposed to exist in the first place. The United States Mint operates with strict quality controls, multiple inspection points, and automated sorting systems designed to catch anomalies before they ever leave the facility. So any error coin that escapes into circulation is a genuine miracle of probability, a 1 in millions occurrence that becomes more valuable precisely because it should have been destroyed. Collectors chase these coins not just for their monetary worth but for the thrill of the hunt, the historical significance of holding a piece that defied the system, and the bragging rights of owning something that almost no one else possesses. The 1972 dime errors have become particularly legendary because they emerged during a period when the hobby of coin collecting was exploding in America, with millions of people searching through rolls of coins from banks, examining their pocket change with magnifying glasses, and building communities around the shared excitement of discovery. This massive increase in collector scrutiny meant that error coins from the early 1970s were more likely to be identified, preserved, and documented than errors from earlier decades, creating a robust market with established grading standards and auction records that continue to climb as new collectors enter the hobby and existing ones upgrade their collections. The auction history of 1972 dime errors reads like a thriller novel, with record after record being shattered as wealthy collectors compete in bidding wars that sometimes last for minutes, with auctioneers hammering down sales that make headlines in numismatic publications and mainstream news alike. One particularly famous 1972 double-die obverse dime, graded mint state 67 by despite decades of collector searching, despite millions of rolls being unwrapped and examined, error coins continue to surface from old collections, estate sales, bank vaults, and yes, even pocket change. People inherit jars of coins from relatives who never knew what they had. They find rolls tucked away in dresser drawers from the 1970s that were never searched. And occasionally, incredibly, a sharp-eyed cashier or a curious child spots something odd and starts a journey that ends with a life-changing payday. The 1972 dime error market is also fueled by the grading services. Companies like PCGS and NGC that authenticate, grade, and encapsulate coins in plastic holders with numerical ratings from 1 to 70, where a grade of 60 or above is considered uncirculated and the difference between a 64 and a 67 can mean tens of thousands of dollars in value. These third-party graders have brought legitimacy and liquidity to the error coin market, allowing buyers to purchase with confidence and sellers to realize top dollar for genuinely rare pieces, and the population reports they publish, showing how many examples of each variety exist in each grade, drive prices even higher when collectors realize that only a handful of perfect specimens survive. Now, I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine you are at a garage sale on a Saturday morning, the kind of sale where boxes of junk sit on folding tables and elderly neighbors are selling decades of accumulated stuff for pennies on the dollar. You spot a coffee can filled with coins, marked old change, $5, and you hand over a $5 bill without thinking much about it. You get home, pour the coins onto your kitchen table, and start sorting through them while watching television. Most are ordinary, clad dimes from the 1970s and 1980s, a few quarters, some worn pennies, but then there it is, a 1972 dime that looks a little funny. The date seems to have a shadow. The mint mark looks odd, or maybe it is missing entirely. Your heart starts pounding. You grab a magnifying glass, the one you bought for $3 at the drugstore, and you examine the coin under a bright lamp. The doubling is clear. The mint mark is absent. The off-center strike is dramatic. Whatever the error, you realize in that moment that you might be holding something worth more than your house, more than your car, more than everything you own combined. This is not fantasy. This is the reality of coin collecting, and it happens more often than you might think, because these coins were spent into circulation decades ago and they are still circulating, still hiding, still waiting for the right person to recognize their true value. The 1972 dime, in its error varieties, represents the ultimate democratic treasure hunt, where anyone with a sharp eye and a little knowledge can participate, regardless of wealth or connections, and where the next great find could come from the most unexpected place. But I need to be honest with you, not every 1972 dime is valuable, and the vast majority are worth exactly 10 cents, which is why education is your most important tool. You need to know what to look for, how to distinguish genuine errors from damage or post-mint alterations, and where to go for authentication if you think you have found something special. The internet has made this easier than ever with forums, Facebook groups, YouTube channels like this one, and online databases where you can compare your coin to verified examples. But there is also a lot of misinformation out there, with people claiming that common coins are rare or that minor damage constitutes a valuable error. So you must be careful and do your research before getting too excited or spending money on coins that turn out to be ordinary. That said, the potential rewards are so enormous that the effort is absolutely worth it. And even if you never find $1 million dime, the hobby of coin collecting enriches your life in countless other ways, connecting you to history, sharpening your observational skills, and building a community of fellow enthusiasts who share your passion. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into the 1972 one dime and its staggering potential value of $44 million for the rarest examples, I want to leave you with a powerful thought and a tantalizing promise. The coin we just explored is incredible, no doubt about it, But what if I told you that the next coin we are going to examine is even more unbelievable, even more valuable, and carries a story so shocking that it will make the 1972 dime seem almost ordinary by comparison? That is right, we are not done yet, not even close, because coming up next is a coin from 1969, struck at the Denver Mint, that has been valued at an almost unimaginable $61 million, and the reasons behind its extreme rarity will blow your mind. So do not click away, do not skip ahead, and do not let this video end without hearing about the 1969 D1 dime, because if you thought 44 million was life-changing, just wait until you hear what 61 million can buy, and more importantly, how a tiny mint mark mistake created one of the most valuable coins in American history. Stay right there, keep your eyes peeled, and remember, the next time someone hands you change, check it carefully, because you never know when fortune will smile upon you. Last, the 1969 D1 dime. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again. And today you are about to understand exactly why this tiny copper nickel disc has become the stuff of numismatic legend. Imagine a coin so ordinary that you might toss it into a parking meter without a second thought, yet so extraordinarily rare that collectors have spent decades searching for just one confirmed example, and when it finally surfaced, the numismatic world stopped breathing for a moment. This is not just money, this is a ticket to unimaginable wealth, and the 1969 D Roosevelt dime carries a valuation that will make your head spin. $61 million for the rarest, most perfect specimen ever documented. Yes, you heard that correctly, $61 million for a single dime that weighs less than a paperclip and could fit on the tip of your finger. A coin that was struck in Denver, Colorado, in a year when the United States was fractured by war protests, moon landings, and cultural revolution, yet the mint kept producing dimes by the millions, almost all of them utterly forgettable, except for the handful that carried a mistake so subtle it took years for anyone to even notice. Let me transport you back to 1969, a year that feels like ancient history to some of you and like yesterday to others. A time when the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity to meet the demands of a booming economy and a population that still used cash for nearly every transaction. The Roosevelt dime series was well established by then, having replaced the Mercury dime in 1946, and the design featuring Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and the Torch of Liberty flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse had become as familiar as the flag itself. These dimes were struck in the same copper-nickel-clad composition that had been introduced in 1965, a change forced by the rising price of silver that made the old 90% silver dimes worth more as metal than as money, and by 1969 the mint had perfected the art of producing these clad coins in enormous quantities. Denver's contribution was marked with the tiny D mint mark positioned just to the left of the torch on the reverse. A small letter that most people never even notice when they handle their change. Yet that single letter is the key to one of the greatest rarities in 20th century American coinage. Here is where the story takes a turn into the realm of mystery and high-stakes collecting. The 1969 D dime is not rare in its standard form. Millions were made and most are worth exactly 10 cents. But a tiny number of these coins were struck from dies that carried a massive error, one that would eventually make them worth more than some of the most famous paintings in the world. The specific error that drives the astronomical valuation of the 1969 D dime involves the mint mark itself, or rather, the absence of it in a way that should have been impossible under normal minting procedures. You see, in 1969, the Denver Mint used dies that had the D mint mark punched into them before they ever reached the coining presses. A standard practice that ensured every coin struck at Denver would bear the identifying letter. However, and this is where probability and fate intersect to create numismatic magic, a small number of dies either had their mint marks polished away during maintenance, were repunched in a way that created dramatic doubling visible under magnification, or, and this is the theory that excites collectors the most, were actually Philadelphia dies that somehow found their way to Denver and were used to strike coins without any mint mark at all. The result was a tiny population of 1969 D dimes that appeared to be Philadelphia issues, or that showed dramatic mint mark anomalies, and because the mint's quality control was designed to catch exactly this kind of mistake, the fact that any escaped into circulation represents a failure of the system that is almost as valuable to collectors as the coins themselves. But the 1969 D dime story does not end with mint mark mysteries, because this year also produced some of the most dramatic double die errors in the entire Roosevelt series, with hub doubling so severe that the date, the lettering, and even Roosevelt's eye showed distinct shadow images that are visible without any magnification to a trained observer. These double dies occurred because the die creation process in 1969 was still partly manual, with hubs and dies being aligned by hand in presses that required multiple impressions to transfer the full design. And when the alignment was even slightly off between impressions, the resulting die would produce thousands of coins with doubled features before the error was discovered. The 1969 D double die obverse dimes are particularly prized because the doubling is often centered on the date, making it one of the first things you notice when examining the coin, and in a series where many double dies are subtle enough to require a loop, the dramatic nature of the 1969 doubling makes these coins instantly recognizable and highly marketable. Then there are the OFF center strikes from 1969 D, errors that occurred when planchets failed to seat properly in the coining collar, resulting in designs that are partially missing or pushed to one edge of the coin. The value of these errors depends on the percentage of off-center strike and whether the date remains fully visible, with the most valuable examples being those struck 50% or more off-center while still retaining the complete date, because the date is essential for attribution and proves that the error occurred during the striking of a 1969 D dime rather than some other year. A 1969 D dime struck dramatically off-center with full date visible and in uncirculated condition could easily command a five-figure price at auction, and the rarity of such pieces in high grade makes them the subject of intense competition whenever they appear on the market. We also need to discuss the broad-struck 1969 D dimes, where the collar die failed to engage and the coin expanded outward like a copper-nickel flower, creating a thin, oversized disc with the design stretched across its enlarged surface. These errors are visually stunning, immediately catching the eye of even non-collectors, and the 1969 D broad-struck dimes have established themselves as favorites in the error coin community, with pristine examples selling for impressive sums to collectors who specialize in striking anomalies. Another category of 1969 D errors that deserves attention is the clash die variety, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring elements of one design onto the other. When this happens repeatedly, the dies develop ghost images that then appear on every coin they strike, and 1969 D dimes with dramatic die clashes showing the torch outline on Roosevelt's profile or vice versa have become collectible varieties with dedicated followings and published attribution numbers in the standard reference books. The 1969 D dime also occasionally appears with lamination errors, where impurities in the copper-nickel-clad layers cause portions of the metal to flake or peel away, creating textured surfaces that look like ancient maps or weathered stone. While these are less valuable than the striking errors, they still represent genuine mint mistakes that appeal to specialists and can bring premiums well above face value for dramatic examples. Now, why has the 1969 D dime reached the stratospheric valuation of $61 million in collectors' estimates and auction speculation? The answer lies in a perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, condition census, and the psychology of the collecting market. First, the specific error varieties that command these prices are so rare that only a handful of specimens are known to exist in any condition, and when you factor in the survival rate of coins from 1969, many having been spent, lost, damaged, or melted over 50-plus years, the number of high-grade examples becomes vanishingly small, perhaps single digits or even unique. Second, the 1969 D dime errors emerged during a pivotal year in American history, the year of the moon landing, the Woodstock Festival, and the height of the Vietnam War. giving them a historical resonance that transcends mere numismatics and appeals to collectors who see these coins as tangible artifacts of a transformative moment in the nation's story. Third, the grading services have documented so few high-grade 1969D error dimes that the population reports read like exclusive club memberships, with PCGS and NGC having certified perhaps one or two examples in mint state 67 or higher, and the knowledge that no finer specimens are likely to exist drives competitive bidding to levels that seem irrational to outsiders but make perfect sense to dedicated collectors. The auction history of 1969D dime errors is filled with drama, intrigue, and record-breaking sales that have made headlines in publications like Coin World and Numismatic News. One particularly famous example, a 1969D double die obverse graded mint state 66, sold in a private transaction for a price that was not publicly disclosed but was rumored to be in the mid-six figures. And despite 50 years of searching, despite the advent of coin roll hunting clubs, online forums, and YouTube channels dedicated to error coins, the 1969D dime errors continue to be among the most elusive prizes in American numismatics, and the possibility that one is sitting in an old dresser drawer, a forgotten piggy bank, or a box of inherited junk is not fantasy. It is mathematical probability. Every year, coins that have been hidden for decades surface at estate sales, in bank vaults, and in collections that were never properly examined, and the 1969D dime, with its potential for life-changing value, remains the ultimate prize for the persistent and the lucky. The community of error coin collectors is a passionate, knowledgeable, and surprisingly welcoming group, with experts who spend their weekends searching through rolls of dimes from banks, examining thousands of coins to find that one needle in the haystack that makes all the effort worthwhile. They share their finds online, write articles for numismatic journals, and gather at conventions where the atmosphere is electric with the possibility that someone will announce a new discovery that rewrites the population reports and sets new records. If you think you have found a 1969D dime with a potential error, the first step is careful examination under good lighting with a strong magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, looking specifically at the mint mark for doubling, absence, or anomalies, and at the date and lettering for signs of hub doubling. The next step is comparison with verified examples, which can be found in reference books, online databases, and auction archives. And if your coin appears to match a known rare variety, you should submit it to a professional grading service for authentication and encapsulation, a process that costs a modest fee but can transform a suspicious coin into a marketable asset with established credibility. I want to share a story that illustrates the incredible potential of these coins. A collector in the Midwest, whom I will call John to protect his privacy, inherited a small collection of coins from his uncle in the late 1990s, a collection that had sat in a shoebox for 20 years without anyone looking at it closely. John was not a collector himself, but he had watched a television program about rare coins and decided to examine the dimes in the box, mostly out of boredom on a rainy Sunday afternoon. Among the ordinary clad dimes from the 1960s and 1970s, he found a 1969D that looked slightly odd, with what appeared to be doubling on the date. He posted photos in an online forum, where experienced collectors immediately recognized the potential significance of his find. After submitting the coin to PCGS, it came back authenticated as a genuine double die obverse in mint state 64, a grade that was far from perfect but still respectable for a 50-year-old coin. John sold that dime at auction for more money than he had ever held in his hands at one time, enough to pay off his mortgage, buy a new car, and take his family on a vacation they had never been able to afford. That is the power of knowledge, persistence, and a little bit of luck, and it is available to anyone willing to learn what to look for. The 1969D dime, in all its varieties and error forms, represents the pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting, the coin that separates casual hobbyists from serious numismatists, and the find that can transform an ordinary life into an extraordinary one. As we conclude this exploration of the 1969 D1 dime and its jaw-dropping valuation of $61 million for the rarest examples, I want you to remember that the world of rare coins is not closed to outsiders or reserved for the wealthy. It is open to anyone with curiosity, patience, and the willingness to look closely at the small pieces of history that pass through our hands every day. The 1969 D dime proves that even the most common, most overlooked objects can hide secrets of immense value, and that fortune favors not just the bold, but the observant. So the next time you get change at the grocery store, the gas station, or the coffee shop, take a moment to look at those dimes, check the dates, examine the mint marks, and imagine the possibilities, because you never know when you might be holding a piece worth more than a mansion, more than a yacht, more than a lifetime of ordinary earnings, and that moment of discovery, that heartbeat of realization, is what makes this hobby one of the most thrilling pursuits on earth. Thank you for staying with me through this journey into the incredible world of 1972 and 1969 D-dime errors. Keep searching, keep learning, and may your next handful of change contain the treasure that changes everything.